looking at Parshas Pinchas. Ein Hei Amud Aleph. צו את בני ישראל ואמרת להם את קורבני לחמי לישי ואמרת להם זה האישה. So this is the commandment to bring to bring the daily sacrifice, Tamid.
In the afternoon. Or the morning.
In the morning and the afternoon. We say this every day in davening.
But it's two different mitzvahs.
Machlokas, whether you count them as two different ones or whether it's one. I think the Ramban counts it as one, or no, the Ramban counts it as two, and the Rambam I think counts it as one. But I don't remember because I don't learn daily Rambam, so I don't know. In any case, but they're certainly not me'akev one another, meaning that if you brought one and you didn't bring the other, so they stand by themselves. In any case, the thing he's going to talk about is very different. ואמרת להם, להבין מהו ואמרת ואמרת. Why does it say twice? You should say to them. ואמרת להם, קורבני לחמי לאישה, ריח ניחוחי תקריבו לי במועדו, ואמרת להם זה האישה. In other words, he's saying, bring this daily sacrifice, and tell them also, first thing is command them to bring the daily sacrifice, and then you should also tell them what it is, what it stands for. The second statement is to tell them that this is what gives the fragrance in Hashem's nostrils, as it were. Obviously a symbol.
But is that so strange?
Ken.
This is what I want you to do. Okay, so now I'm going to explain to you what it's all about.
Because we don't have, about any of the other commandments, we don't have an explanation in the Torah. What is it good for? The only thing we might have is when it says Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. The only explanation or tam, a reason given for other commandments, is that some of them are Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim, that they're a memory for Yetzias Mitzrayim. This is the only example, as far as I remember, of something being given an actual reason. All the other commandments, you can guess what the reason is. No, it gives you a reward, but it doesn't tell you what the reason is.
That's the reason. If you do what I say, you'll live long on the land.
Say that, but that's not the reason. Again, it's like that's the consequence. That's the result. But you're saying, why is it important? So, a lot of, from the Rambam and on, not just the Rambam, but the Rambam's the most well-known, in Moreh Nevuchim, a lot of the third part of Moreh Nevuchim is about explaining the reasons for the mitzvot. So this is really the binyanav, this is really the one example in the Torah where the Torah itself tells us what the reason for a mitzvah is. Afterwards, a lot of the Rishonim, like the Rambam and everybody else, they try to write books explaining what the reason for different mitzvahs, different commandments are. But this is the example, the prime example, the one that the Torah says clearly. This is all for the fragrance that comes up. הנה כל המצוות צריך האדם לקיים במחשבה, דיבור ומעשה. So if there's a reason, so if Moshe was told to tell us, and it's a separate saying, you have to say it separately, that there's a reason for this, and this is the reason, so that you can learn from that, binyanav, it's a general rule, that all the mitzvahs have to have some kind of reason behind them, some machshava, some thought. And the thought is where the reason is. The action is the action. That's the first part of the Tzav b'nei Yisrael v'natan et korbani lachmi li'isha reach nichuchi tishmeru le'akriv li b'moado. It could have stopped there. Obviously, it also mixes up the laws of how to prepare it with a reason, because it doesn't want it to be completely separate. And saying while you're doing it, you should also have some reason in mind. So he says, from this we learn kol hamitzvot tzarich adam lekayem b'machshava, dibur v'maaseh. So even the fact that he said here, and you shall say to them, that also becomes part of the package. That it's not enough to just think it, Meaning it's not enough that I reveal the reason to you, Moshe Rabbeinu. I want you to tell it to the Jewish people. So if I want you to tell it to the Jewish people, it means that there's also a dimension of speech here. So there's thought where the reason is, the speech of saying the reason, and the action, which is what the commandment is, to actually do. How do these work out? V'chen b'kol banot. I don't know why he says v'chen b'kol banot. He should have said, it's not just v'chen b'kol banot. We learned this from the kol banot. We learned this from korbanos. How does it work? Machshava zu tefila, avodah shebelev keneged hakorbanot. So the thought becomes davening. Why? Because that's where you're working on the intent. All of tefillah, it's almost like to say that a person can daven without having intent is almost contradictory. Because the whole purpose of davening is to have intent, is to have a reason behind what I'm doing. Okay?
There's a genuine intent and a specific intent.
Okay. So the general intent, we say that's me'akev. But really we say even that, filot, mitzvot enan tzachot kavanah. We paskin in the end that they don't need kavanah. And yet, at least the first bracha of Shmoneh Esrei, you have to have kavanah. You didn't have kavanah, we tell you don't go back. Why don't go back? Because if you didn't have kavanah the first time, you're not going to have it the second time. It'll be a bracha of vatal. So we don't get into that. But in principle, of course, you should have intent. Otherwise, what's the whole point of davening? Vedibur, what's the speech? So in the korbanos, hu Talmud Torah the korbanot. It's learning the laws of the korbanos, of the sacrifices. To learn, you have to speak. Those are the words, like we're doing. Kol ha'osek b'Torah Olah ki'ilu ikriv olah. And that's what the sages mean when they say that every person who learns the laws of the sacrifices, it's as if he brought a sacrifice. What do you mean? He didn't bring a sacrifice, he only learned. Says Alter Rebbe, there's a dimension, v'amarta, and the word v'amarta, that becomes speech. And that dimension of speech is part of the mitzvah. And then finally, avodat korbanot asman, pasim b'nei shana hu ha'maaseh. And finally, in the end, you also have the act of the commandment. In the case of the sacrifices, it's actually bringing the physical sacrifice. And if you don't bring the physical sacrifice, you haven't done anything at all. Okay. והנה, ואמרת להם זה האיש שנאמר על מעשה הקורבן עצמו. ופסוק ראשון צווה בני ישראל, ואמרת להם קהל בחינת מחשבה ודיבור. So that's what I would have thought the other way around. ואמרת להם את קורבני לחמי לאישה ריח ניחתי תשמעו להקריב לי במועדו. I would have thought that that's the commandment. He says no. I would have thought that that's the... Ken. So no, I said it right?
Mm-hmm.
No. I would have thought that that's talking about the action. Because you're supposed to bring a sacrifice. He says no, the details are really in the second part. So I said it wrong in the beginning. The details of how you make this, that it has to be 2 lambs, one in the morning, one in the evening, that's in the second V'amalta. The first V'amalta, that's the reason. V'amalta lem et korbani lachmi leishai reach nichochi tishmeru leakriv li b'moado, to bring me a reach nichoach. He learns it from the first part. So he says the first part.
Isn't that general? Or?
It's pretty general. But upset. He calls it korbani lachmi leishai, for my fires. So what is my fire? The korbanot are all called ishim, meaning fiery beings, because they're burnt on the altar. So the fact that it's called, so first he says it's just an ishe, and then he says which ishe? V'amarta lehem zeh ishe. Here's the ishe. Now I'll tell you what fiery can korban, what fiery being do you need to bring? So it's 2 lambs every day. So the first statement, Zeh Ishe, that's talking about... Sorry, the first statement, Tzav b'nei Yisrael v'amarta lehem ka'el b'chinat machshava v'dibur, that's about the thought and the speech. And the more detailed section, which comes afterwards, that's about the action. וביאור עניין זה, הנה צריך להבין עניין ריח ניחוח שנאמר בקורבנות. So to understand the whole Inyan, the whole issue behind the sacrifices, and from this to understand how the whole world is structured according to thought, speech, and action, our active life is in three dimensions: thought, speech, and action. We have to understand what it means to bring or to have a good fragrance before Hashem. שנאמר בקורבנות. ופרשו חז"ל נחת רוח לפניי שאמרתי ונעשה רצוני. So what's a good fragrance? It's a symbol for nachat ruach. The phrase in Hebrew, nachat ruach, means a satisfied spirit, or a complacent spirit.
Why should it be any different if you put on tefillin or you go to shul?
No difference. No difference. He's just saying we learn this, the general principle of there being reasons behind the korbanot, reasons behind the mitzvos. This reason of nachat ruach, we learn it from the korbanos.
But how do you say that's a reason? That's a consequence. I did what Hashem wanted, and consequent to that, Hashem was happy.
Okay, but that's like saying, okay, so
maybe Hashem is going to.
When we say kavanah, you could have others, but this is one he revealed. The kavanah, the intent that I have is to cause him satisfaction.
But that's a general kavanah that goes in every single mitzvah. What do I get up in the morning for when I can stay in bed? Hashem wants me to be in shul, right?
Because it brings him a good fragrance,
right?
Which means a satisfied, a complacent spirit. She'amarti v'nasa rtzoni, that I said and my will was done. Why? Because he gave us free choice. Because he gave us free choice, we could not do it. So, on which side of the free choice do you want to stand? Do you want to choose?
How could you not do it? How could you upset Hashem when he does
the same way that you upset your father. What's the difference?
What?
The same way people upset their father, they upset their wives, they upset their neighbors.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. It's a very strange thing. It happens from time to time.
Impossible. Okay.
I've heard of it happening. So why is it? Why did Hashem build it this way? It's a very interesting question.
Because Yesh Ratzon, you can't argue with Ratzon. You can't argue with you had a chukah, you had a desire. And you can't argue with the desire because it's incomprehensible.
That's Ta'ava, you can't argue.
Ta'ava, okay.
Ta'ava is a little bit more than Ratzon. Ratzon will make sense. I don't want to command you in the sense that you can't not do what I say. I want you to do it from your own free will. That's why Hashem is not crazy about punishing. Because there's no real because what's the punishment going to gain? That the person will become afraid of you? Punishment is only worth it if the child understands the lesson. But if it's just punishment to punish, it makes no sense. How are you advancing? How are you moving forward? Sometimes I have to punish you to protect you. Listen, you're doing something that's really going to hurt you, so don't put your fingers into the outlet. So then I have to punish you in a way that you'll remember and you won't do it. Even if you won't do it because I told you, you'll do it because you're afraid of the punishment. Say it. Because it's more important for me to save you. But in principle, Hashem doesn't use that. It never really serves any purpose, just to punish. If the person doesn't understand the reason behind it, there's no real utility in it. So again,
how come every time I do something which is not perfect, I see an immediate reaction with Shemayim? Oh, okay, you got on the wrong path. Get back to where you were.
Some people say that that's a chesed that Hashem does, because again, it's like not understanding that I've been sticking my finger into the electrical outlet. So you say that in Chutz La'aretz the Hashgacha is less, and in Eretz Yisrael it's more. But the moment you do something,
the Kodesh Baruch is makbid with the Siddiqim up to the hair's breadth.
So maybe you're a tzaddik.
No, I'm not. But I'm saying,
maybe you are. If he's that strict with you. Usually you see that the things take years. until you finally get hit. Then you say, oh, maybe months, years, but they take time. It doesn't happen usually overnight. For most people, it's not overnight. I think people tend too much to associate what happens to them as directly a consequence of something that they did. I don't think the world works that way. It's much more complex. Because Hashem is very
easygoing.
He has a lot of patience. And again, the purpose is to get you to choose the right thing, not to do the right thing because you're scared of getting the punishment. It doesn't work. Over time, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's to punish because you want to train somebody. You got an animal. You don't get a human being. So the world is
in response.
What? Yeah. We just finished in the Nachyomia that I put out. You're not in it because you have too many things to listen to.
I'm doing Rabbi every day.
Okay. So the Nachyomia, I just finished Eov.
Okay.
I actually gave a class on it yesterday. A class, sort of. Gematrias. Because there's a
Zoom class?
No, I'll send it to you. It's on the Rebbe 24 channel. There's like friends of mine in Beit Shemesh that they have this whole platform. So I went to Beit Shemesh yesterday to tape 2 classes. And not my stuff, it's all the Ravs. So it's a very interesting parallel between Bnot Tzlofchad and the 3 daughters of Eov. After Eov received his life back, at the end of the book, Hashem gives him back a new life, basically. And he lives for 140 years. And he has 3 daughters that it says specifically that he gave them an inheritance in his lands among the brothers. So they're like Bnot Tzlofchad. And there's incredible mathematical relationships between the 5 and the 3. The 5 daughters of Tzlofchad and the 3 daughters of Eov. And Tzlofchad and Eov himself, I don't know if there's an opinion that they're a Gilgul of one another or something like that. But in any case,
before.
Supposedly he's before. He's in time of Avram, maybe. Maybe he is Avram. Who knows? Because he has 7 sons. That's a little similar. But anyway, Avram probably knew the story. But in any case, the point is that from Eov you see that the answer in the end is everything is b'hashgacha, but it's too complex. Like, don't think for a second. It's almost a paradox, but it's not really a paradox. He's just telling him everything that I did is b'hashgacha, but you can't hope to understand why things happened when they happened. I mean, your story, the way you see it, is always a limited version of what's actually going on. And what's actually going on is just too complex for the human mind.
It's like a kaleidoscope. There's thousands of different pieces.
Okay, there's too many. You just can't. You'll never be able to put the whole picture together. So believe me that I want your best. But the picture is very complex. It's sort of like in a certain sense, medicine today realizes how complex life is. It knows how complex it is. But it tries to do something. Because you can't not try to do something. But in the end, a lot of people in the end understand this, the doctors don't know. Really, they don't know. It doesn't make what they're doing.
What does medicine do? I said medicine is now got very advanced. It's how to make you patient and how to stop you doing cocky. It's really, amazing stuff.
They can even connect the 2 together.
Right.
If you really want them to. We don't know, but it doesn't mean that we don't know anything. We know something. And sometimes what we know helps. And sometimes what we know doesn't help. Sometimes it even hurts. But we can't get the whole picture. We don't understand. It's just too complex. And we're talking about something here, it's in front of us. What you can't figure out this body, how many parts has it got? It's got no moving parts even.
So why did Hashem make the world so amazingly complex? Why didn't he make it a little bit simpler?
Who said that it's so complex? Maybe it's really not very complex. It's just that our minds are limited.
So if it's our minds are limited, then Hashem has made it complex because we are the ones who are trying to comprehend it. Why didn't he make it or either give us better minds or less complexity.
So the simple argument is ilu yedati ve'itiv, that if I would understand how Hashem, I would know how Hashem functions, I would be Hashem. So there must be some huge difference.
That's in the end. But to know
What do you
the
mean?
fact, if I know that there's reward and punishment, I know that Hashem works with us reward and punishment. I'm not saying I know Hashem. I know something of one of his attributes.
No, you're saying if I understood how it all worked, I know there's a reward and punishment, but I don't know how it works. How it works is too complex. The fact that we know that there is we know there's lungs. We know they have alveoli. We know this. We don't know how it works. It's too complex. We know it's there. We know that this thing is in place because he told us that it's in place. But it's just too complex. So I think the most important, why are we so against Christianity? What's the issue with Christianity?
You want a list?
No, this is one issue that's the biggest one. When a person comes and says,
the Jews, that's the biggest problem.
what?
They hate the Jews.
That's the Christian church. Christianity as an idea that somebody comes and says, I and Hashem are one, which no prophet ever said this, no sage ever said this, nobody ever said this. That's to say that Hashem is limited, because you're limited. That's to pull the foundation out of all religion.
They took the unity and made it into a trinity.
That's a small part of the problem. We also have 10 tefillot, so what? We said about
That's
Hashem
not
himself.
Hashem. It's not dividing Hashem.
In a certain sense it is. So what? So what? That's not a big issue. The big issue is that somebody comes and says, I understand Hashem. What are you talking about?
Okay, so Hashem is omnipotent.
You've taken, maybe you're not omnipotent, you're just
you're
omniscient.
Talking about nitty-gritty, and I'm talking about principles.
Okay.
I understand that Hashem has certain principles, good and bad,
Okay.
life and death, reward and punishment. I don't necessarily understand the mechanism of it.
Right.
I know that if I want to get from here to the airport, I can get on a train.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean to say I have to be a train driver to
Right.
understand how the train
No.
works.
No.
But I know that there is such a thing.
No problem. That's fine. So you don't understand the particulars. You can't understand how it all works. And you certainly don't understand why I have and he doesn't. He looks to me much more pious than I am. Why does he? Why does
pious? Because he
More
sits and
tzedek.
learns. Sits and learns.
What? Whatever it is. I don't understand how Hashem distributes the world. I don't get it. I understand the principles, but when I try to apply these principles to what I see in front of me, I'm left inevitably with the sense of either these principles are wrong, which is what a lot of people come to, unfortunately, or the other true, correct conclusion is I cannot understand how these principles are applied in the particulars. It's all in the details. How it works, how it's actually applied, that I can't understand. The moment you say, I can understand Hashem, you've taken the foundation out of being a human being. A human being who thinks that he understands Hashem has lost his place in the world. Because the world, by definition, is a place of concealment, where Hashem conceals how he's working.
Did you read Harriet Kaplan's book on the problems of Christianity?
No.
It's a very interesting stuff.
You have it?
I read it. I don't have it. No,
okay.
Like the Good Samaritan. You know the story of the Good Samaritan? It's the most anti-Semitic story that's ever written in the annals of mankind. There was a guy who was walking down the street and he asked a Jew to help him. The
No, he
Jews
didn't
get
help.
lost, right?
Yeah.
So he goes to Samaritans,
Shomroni.
the sworn enemies of the Jews.
Yeah.
He helps him, right?
Yeah.
And then there's, where was Yoshki Ponderak's born?
What?
Where was Yoshki Ponderak's born?
Who's that?
Yoshka ben Ponderax. Ponderax was the Roman soldier who impregnated Mary Magdalena.
So,
That's
he's
it.
talking Greek to me, or Latin, as the case may
There's a
be.
book called All the Tosuses that were taken out of the what do you call it?
The Shas.
Shas. The whole story of How Yoshki Pondrax. Yeshu ben Pondrax. Mary was married to a guy called Joseph.
Wow.
He had a son called Yeshu. And it wasn't Joseph's son.
Legitimate.
He was the legionnaire called Pondrax. So where were they born? What does the story say? They came to Jerusalem and there was no room in the inn.
No.
Right? So they go to Bethlehem. But it says in the Chumash, no one will ever say that I came to Yerushalayim for the
Mishnah.
and there was.
Well, no.
So the whole thing is built on anti-Semitism before you even start.
Sure, obviously, afterwards it became very anti-Semitic. But the reason why Chazal threw this guy out, regardless of whether it's mamzer or not a mamzer, all these questions were, I don't think, were significant, really, was because of the self-idolatry.
But it wasn't him. It was all Paul.
No, he's the one who said these statements.
He said it? So I never read his stuff in.
Anyway.
I always understood that it was Paul who was a spy of the based in Agoda. Did you ever hear that Paul was a spy?
There's two different versions. Whether it was Paul or Shaul or Shimon Kefa, Peter.
Oh, yeah?
All I know is Peter, Paul, and Mary.
They all went to prison anyway, so I wouldn't be.
They did?
One of them did, yes. One of them was
Anyway, so again, why is this not a consequence? Because it's a reason. It's why am I doing things? I'm doing them because a human being has the choice to provide Hashem with the satisfaction, call it, or here it's the complacency of spirit, that the spirit that he gave is being used in the way that he wanted it to be used. Nachat ruach. The ruach is vayipach
then we
v'afav
have a
nishma.
very serious problem. That Hashem gave us this mitzvah to do, and it brings him nachas ruach.
If we do it.
If we do it, obviously, because of course we can do it, right? We have no korbanos.
So that's why he says we have the two other aspects right now. The two other aspects are the davening, which is the machshava, and the learning, which is the dibur.
But that's because we haven't got anything else. We need the korbanos.
You're missing the ma'isa, for sure. No question. You're missing. And that's exactly what he says now. וגם להבין למה עבודת הקורבנות תלויה בבית המקדש דווקא. מה שאין כן שאר המצוות. Why is it that sacrifices, specifically out of all the commandments, they're the ones that are dependent on the base of Mikdash?
There were other things that were only done in the base of Mikdash.
Not many. Not many. Even Bikurim, we still do at some level, as a memory maybe. Korbanos you can't even do as a memory. There's nothing like that at all. Challah, we take challah. Even the things that were dependent on the base of Mikdash, we do to some extent. But the korbanos we can't do at all. So why are they different in that sense? That they're so dependent on the altar, on there being a base of Mikdash. Whereas all the other mitzvot we have Talmud Torah, we still have them. So truthfully, out of all the 613, so there's a list in the Chinuch. It says there's only 270 that we can do without a base of Mikdash. But almost all of those, when you subtract 613, 270 from 613, what you're left with is 343, Geshem. It's 7 to the third power. So 7 to the third, 343 mitzvos are dependent on the base of Mikdash. So this number, they're both aseh and lot aseh, prohibitive and prescriptive. So these, even though there's such a large number, almost all of them revolve around the sacrifices. In the end, it's all sacrifice. Even when you say Yom Kippur in the base of Mikdash, what are you talking about? You're talking about bringing these and these korbanot. That's what you're talking about. That's the Yom Kippur in the
25 hours of the Kohen Gadol going for one sacrifice.
Okay. There's no. That's really the essence of the base of Mikdash, the sacrifices, and everything that's left, the other 270, we do them today. And moreover, that we have the major one, the Talmud Torah keneged kulando. We have Talmud Torah, learning Torah, which is equivalent, as it were, in some sense, to the rest. ואפילו מחשבה ודיבור דקורבנות שהם תפילה שכנגד הקורבנות ותלמוד תורה דקורבנות, we still have the thought and the speech of the קורבנות. יכולים לקיימן בזמן שאין בית המקדש קיים גם כן. So that's another question. Why did we lose just specifically the action of the sacrifices?
Why did we lose the base of English?
בסדר, the way that he, again, if you look at things from a cultural point of view, you would say a statement like, we lost the base of Mikdash. If you look at it from a Torah point of view, you say, we lost 343 mitzvahs. Because the Torah doesn't look at it as base of Mikdash it's a mitzvah in and of itself, obviously, to build him a house. But in a certain sense, we do that when we build a shul. Okay? It's not what he meant, but there's some memory of it. But what we've lost completely is all the sacrifices, that we don't do anything similar to it. אך הנה כל זה יובן בהקדים להבין מה שכתוב היום לעשותם ולא למחר לעשותם. To understand all this, we have to understand the purpose of life, which is to do the mitzvahs today and not to do them tomorrow. Meaning, what's the tomorrow? שהעולם הזה דווקא הוא עולם המעשה. That this world, the situation that we're in now, that we still can do things, this is the world of action. And in it, only in this constellation, only in the way that the world is now, at this moment, ובו ניתנה הבחירה ביד האדם לבחור בטוב. It's only in this constellation that we have this ability to choose, we have free will to choose to act. ולא עוד, and not only do we have the freedom to choose to act properly, אלא אפילו אם כבר עבר עבירה, יכולנו לשוב בתשובה ולחזור לעבודת השם. That even if we've done something wrong, we can still fix it and come back to Hashem. מה שאין כן בעולם הבא. Whereas, after a person finishes his 120 years here, in the world to come, אין הבחירה חופשית ביד האדם. He no longer, the soul no longer has the ability to choose. I was just thinking about this the other day. I thought a good parable for this is a memory stick. Like if you have a disc on key. Only as long as it's connected to the computer and it's getting power can you change what's on the stick. The moment you take it out, the stick's still here. Everything is still here. But now it's frozen. Without power, it's like this world gives you the power, which is called free will, to change things. But once you're disconnected from this world, you pull the plug, you take the disc out, that's it. What you have is what you have.
You take that with you to Gan Eden and plug it in and check out what you've done.
Okay. But you can't plug it in anymore to change what's on it. Only to read it.
Read over.
Okay. רק כמו שנמשך בעולם הזה, כך נשאר בעולם הבא. So, the way he was in this world, that's the way he will continue to be. Whatever he's gained in this world, that's what he will have in his soul. Call it marked, embedded in his soul forever. This is how the soul is now going to be. והגם שרואה שם גילוי אלוקות ביתר שאת, and even though there are experiences there, what is the experience of the soul? The soul sees the grandeur, the splendor of Hashem. And it causes Veshamu bitul anivraim. And you see that the angels that are there, what do they experience? They experience tremendous nullification before God. And yet it doesn't change you at all. It's just an experience, but it doesn't change you. It's scary. You can see the most powerful, you see godliness, and it causes you nullification because you can't stand before it, but it doesn't cause you to change.
So what about all of this davening that you say after someone passes away, and all this kadeshim?
It's for us.
Lias and Neshama.
I'm saying there's still a link. During the first year for sure, there's still a link. So he's still getting something. But it's not the same thing as what you do for him after he passed away is nothing compared to what he could do for himself when he was alive.
Even though everybody does it.
Okay. Sometimes That's all that can be done. Because the person himself, in this lifetime, he didn't understand what life was about.
You missed the boat.
That the hosts of heaven, they bow down to you, meaning they're in nullification. When you look, really, you're looking at the same world. There's no two worlds. It's this world. It's this. Except instead of seeing the tree here, instead of seeing a tree that grows and I need to water it and this and that, I see how the tree is completely nullified before God. In fact, when I look at people, one of the things that's so hard to get, you say, affecting in the other direction. You sometimes, like tomorrow's the Tet Vav, so a lot of people are going to go to Orach Chaim. And Orach Chaim, what do you say? You say, a lot of people will say, help me. You're a great soul. You must be able to intervene on my behalf. So why don't they intervene? Because when they look down at the world, what they see is that everything is nullified before Hashem. You can't even remember, in a certain sense, the soul doesn't remember what free will means. What do you mean intervene? Intervene, that means things can change. Doesn't compute. What are you talking about? It is the way it's supposed to be.
It is what it is.
That's what the world looks like from above. It's going exactly according to plan. What do you want? There's nothing wrong. You're not happy, you're not satisfied. What are you, nuts? Where's your nullification? Because that's what the soul feels overwhelmingly. So it sees the splendor of Hashem, it almost sees the divine plan unfolding, but it says, but it's a plan. And it doesn't understand that here, in this world, we're unsatisfied because really, we have free will. Because we want more. We want something else.
I have to go. I have to go. What can I tell you? Learning tomorrow?
But he can't free himself. The soul can't free itself from where it's already achieved or attained during its lifetime. That's why it's such a big deal to have a body, because you can go above and beyond. You can push, you can do more. And you see people that understood this. You read like great tzaddikim, you see that they completely ignore their bodily needs. It's ridiculous. But they say it's worth it one time to overcome my bodily needs, and to go beyond, above and beyond, is more worthwhile for me than anything else. Of course, in the Chassidus we don't say that. We say you have to take care of your body. You can't harm it. But in the end, the real purpose is to go beyond.
That's the Simach Tzedek and the Chassidus that's on the floor.
Yeah, that's awesome.